Well, good morning. My name is Christine. I'm one of the pastors here. As you're having a seat, turn to the person next to you and say, Women Empowering Women. Women Empowering Women. That is the title of my sermon today. And the enemy, though, he knows the power within women empowering women. So his tendency is for us as women to compare ourselves to each other. Maybe it's, wow, that mother is such a better mother than me. Or her marriage looks so strong. Or I'm single and she's got a boyfriend, right? Or maybe the enemy uses us in ways such as jealousy or gossip or emotional manipulation. There's so many ways that the enemy wants to use us, but God knows that when we empower each other as women, that's when powerful, eternity-shifting things happen. So bow your heads with me as we pray. Jesus, we welcome you here. We thank you that you time and again during your journey on earth empowered women. We thank you for this beautiful story where there's women that are in such sacrificial ways empowering each other. Lord, and we thank you that you have a purpose and a plan in our lives as we examine how you use women to empower other women in Jesus' name. Amen. So men, before you check out on me, I want you to think of a woman that has empowered you. Maybe it's a grandmother, an auntie. I want you to think right now of someone who has been a powerful source for you. Maybe it's a spiritual mother or sister or daughter. There's so many ways that women empower not just women, but men and the CEOs and the orphans and the children. Women are used by God to empower all people. So when I think of women empowering women, I often think of Anne Sullivan. Helen Keller, as many of you know, was blind, deaf, couldn't speak or hear. And because of a woman named Anne Sullivan who stood by her side, she came out of such chaotic inner turmoil. She couldn't speak. There was no way to speak. And she has provided a way for those that are disabled in those ways to have such powerful ways of communication. And she went on to be an author and write books. And she did so much because of a woman named Anne who stood by her. For those of you that have been joining us through the month of March, you know that we've been talking about the 6 types of working genius. And I'm a galvanizer and an enabler. So a galvanizer is someone that corrals the people, and enablement and tenacity are what we're talking about today. And Ruth really encompasses both of those really well. Enablement is someone who helps. And I know in recovery programs, enablement's usually it doesn't have a good connotation. But in this case, enablement is someone who makes things happen. They know how to help, when to help, and can adapt to any situation. They are people-oriented, helping realize a vision by bringing ideas to life. They ensure projects have the resources and support needed to succeed. We see this throughout the book of Ruth. She's also full of tenacity. She's got relentless determination, and we see that in the passage that Nicole just read, where she's like, I'm not leaving your side. Till death, I'm there. And people with the genius of tenacity are task-oriented and love to complete things. They ensure a project meets its intended impact and standards. They are motivated by getting things done, not emotional appeals. They find joy in checking off the tasks on a to-do list. So I love that Ruth is full of both enablement and tenacity. And for those of you that may not know the story, or to remind us of the story, Naomi is filled with a life in chaos. She's got lots of struggles. So Naomi is an Israelite woman who, with her husband and 2 sons, have to flee to Moab, a different area, because in Israel there was a famine in Judah, and it was, no food, no water. And so they're already having to leave their country, go to a new place. Not ideal. And in Moab, there's not a whole lot of Israelite women. So her two sons end up marrying Moabite women, which isn't looked well upon. These are people that are following different gods, and that's not encouraged. And so she's already experiencing, I'm sure, like, this isn't the life I had planned, God. And then her husband dies, and she becomes a widow. Widows, especially in that day and age in Israel, they were poverty-stricken often. They were vulnerable, easily taken advantage of. Well, tragedy upon tragedy hits, and not one, but both of her children, both of her sons die. And I just want to take a moment right here to say, if you've lost your spouse or a child, I cannot imagine the weight of the pain that you are carrying. And I'm so sorry. And you are not alone. As Ruth, who could relate to Naomi's pain in becoming a widow herself, she stood by Naomi. And we as your church body want to stand by you in your grief too. And so the famine lets up in Israel, and Naomi's ready to head back. She's like, stay in Moab, this is your home. And Ruth says, no, I'm going to follow you to the end. I'm not going to leave your side. I'm here to help, and I'm not going to let you do this alone. In Ruth 1:20 through 21, you can turn there with me, it says, Naomi says, don't call me Naomi. She told them, call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. Naomi in Hebrew translates to pleasant or sweet. And Naomi is saying, I need to change my name. My life is bitter, and I'm in extreme pain. And some of you in this room can relate to that pain. And if you can't, because we live in a broken, sinful world, one day you will. Tragedy hits us all. And I can relate to Naomi's pain. I've unfortunately walked through some of the most devastating last 2 years of my life. And for those of you that don't know, I went through an unwanted divorce. And when I stood on my wedding day and took those vows and that covenant, I meant it with every fiber of my being till death. So when I say it was the loss of my biggest dream, I'm not kidding. And I had to look my 4 kids in the face and walk out the last 2 years of the tearing apart of their family unit as they knew it. And I know some of you can relate to the pain that feels so deep that you can feel it in your blood and in your bones. The emotional pain becomes physical. And this is Naomi's life. Grief has a way of feeling so chaotic because everything that you believed you knew about life and God and yourself, it's upside down. And you don't know anymore which way is up, which way is down. And everything you thought you knew about everything shifts. And it feels very chaotic, and it is very hard and confusing. And so I have a picture, November 17th of 2024, so this past November, this was my living room. Grief can sometimes feel like moving. There's lots of boxes, so sometimes, so let me tell you this story. So I was potentially going to be moving into a bigger space, and there was somebody that was going to be taking over my lease. November 17th, I was ready to move out, and it fell through last minute. We were not able to move. And I was like, okay, well, a couple days in boxes isn't going to kill anybody. So, I was like just actively looking for somebody else to take over my lease. I was very proactive, gave it my heart and soul. 1 day goes to 2 to 3. Well, Thanksgiving rolls around, right? November 17th to Thanksgiving. And I'm like, okay, well, this is disappointing, a little bit humiliating. Like, here I am. My kids are like, Mom, why did you box up the house if you didn't know we were moving or not? I don't know. Good question. So, I'm humiliated. I'm frustrated. I had so many women that came over and helped me box up my whole space. Like, women were there. They were just on top of it. We were ready to go. I was like, hey, I'm moving. And they were there, and we did it in like a day. It was amazing. So it's my second Thanksgiving with our family not together, and I didn't want Thanksgiving to look like that. It's disorienting. It feels chaotic. It feels completely unsettling, cluttered. I mean, we can't really move around. There's 4 little kids, So maybe some of you have felt like this, right? Brings you anxiety. Maybe you're worried, stressed, overwhelmed. And so often grief can feel just like that. Like what I really wanted to do, I was just like, man, this is so frustrating. I'm just like ready to just put all the boxes out on the street because we can't move in here. I'm done. I don't even need stuff. It's fine. We'll come back to this story. Let's look at Ruth 1:16 through 17 together. Ruth 1:16 through 17 says, "But Ruth replied, 'Don't urge me to leave you or turn my back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me.'" Ruth empowers Naomi by bringing calm out of chaos, right? She says, I'm not leaving your side. I am not going to go anywhere. I know you're in pain and you're grieving and you can't see up from down. Ruth must have been a model mother-in-law though, right? Because who would give up her whole home and her whole everything she knows about her culture and everything to follow Naomi back unless Naomi first was such an incredible mother-in-law, which we know isn't necessarily common, right? And so there's going to be seasons of our life where we can be like Naomi and pour into Ruth. And then there's going to be seasons where we as Naomi are just completely done and that Ruth can pour back into us. Sometimes it's cyclical and there's times where we need each other and there's times where we can pour out. And so here I am in the middle of my mess. We'll back up a little bit, July of this past year. And I'm in a season in July where I'm like, where are you, God? Because if the divorce wasn't enough, I started to struggle with so many things. And I was just feeling very unseen by God. I was like, this doesn't feel like a story that you're writing. Are you a part of this? Do you see it? Do you care? Because I'm pretty sure your will isn't that there's divorce, because now I see why you hate divorce. It's super painful. It's heartbreaking. And so I'm sitting there like, where are you, God? I don't see you. I don't think you care about me. Well, in July, he smacks me in the face with women that literally showed up at my door, and it clicked. I'm a very slow learner. Finally, he's like, the women all around you that are showing up for you, that's me. They're there in the middle of the night when you're calling at midnight and waking up willing to talk you through your pain. They're there as you're pounding your fist on the ground in anger, screaming at them because you're so upset. They're there when you need, people showed up with extravagant generosity. They met my needs. They were there when my children needed, I could not stand, but they stood for me, for my kids, and loved on them. And God was like, that's me. They are the hands and feet of Jesus. And I got it. I was like, oh my gosh, you are. You're written all over this story. You've shown up time and time and time again. And some were in big, impactful, life-changing ways these women showed up. And some were smaller, but deeply meaningful. Sometimes it was just a prayer when words were not enough. And sometimes it was just the right perspective shift at the right time when I was like, I can't see. They pointed out my blind spots. They shared truth with me when I didn't want to hear it. This is how God uses women to bring calm out of chaos. And it's powerful. God empowered Ruth with enablement and tenacity. And Boaz, okay, so let me catch you up to the story a little bit. Boaz notices, so when they get to Israel, Ruth starts gleaning. Widows are allowed to glean in the fields of harvesters to help provide for their family. So she helps Naomi and herself with the opportunity to glean in the field of these harvesters. The field was owned by Boaz. And Boaz is noticing Ruth. And in Ruth 2:11 through 12, it says, you can follow along with me. Ruth 2:11 through 12. Boaz replied, I've been told all about what you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, how you left your father and mother and your homeland and came to live with a people you did not know before. May the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. What I see in this verse is sacrifice. I mean, Ruth has sacrificed so much to empower this woman, Naomi. And also, I love how God, he's the one that has given Ruth this ability to empower Naomi. And Naomi is empowered to be renewed and refreshed. So we see in Ruth 4:13 through 17. So, spoiler alert, what happens is, here it is. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. When he made love to her, in this time in Israel, when you become a widow, someone in your family can take you in as their wife if they're available, and that's called a guardian redeemer. And so that is what Boaz actually was, and they didn't realize it at the beginning. So when he made love to her, the Lord enabled her to conceive, and Ruth gave birth to a son. The women said to Naomi, Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons, has given him birth. Then Naomi took the child in her arms and cared for him. The women living there said, Naomi has a son, and they named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. So not only does God use Ruth to empower Naomi through Ruth, but then she gives Naomi a grandson, and he ends up being in the lineage of the divine. Ruth, 35 times over, is the great-great-great-great-grandmother of Jesus Christ. Because of her obedience, God used a foreigner, a Moabite, to be in the lineage of Jesus Christ. And what a joy it was that Naomi had a hope and a purpose again. She was provided for, she was cared for. The pale face that she had was brought back to life with color. The frail bones were strengthened. There was so much that happened in the midst of what seemed bleak and impossible, and God brought so much renewal and so much refreshment. So the story of my boxes, they go on, not for a few more days, a few more weeks. We get to December 17th, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going through Christmas in boxes. I'm so sorry. I really tried. But because of a bunch of women that came and unboxed my house right in time for Christmas, we created calm out of that chaos. And it was humiliating. I had to call them up and be like, yep, it's not happening. And it was such a microcosm of my life, because it's just humiliating to have to walk out a story you didn't want. or to have to walk out a story you didn't plan for, or walk out a story that you're sure isn't God's plan for your life, but it happens to be. But here, God used the women to help me unbox and create new spaces. Actually, we created a calm space, and there's actual like calm toys and calm books, and we have a 15-minute timer, and my kids can use that to be calm. And it just helps. They helped me re-envision the space. And that's so often when we unbox the boxes of grief and pain, and we allow women to come in and have the community of Christ come in and help us see our lives in a new way. That's what God can do through that. He can help us take out those things in the box that felt overwhelming, and he can help us start again and start new and start fresh and see things in a different light and have purpose again. Because the things that didn't feel like it had a purpose are able to be used again. And sometimes it feels like, oh my gosh, I wasted all that time, right? And then to be able to see, but there's a new start, and you can start again. Maybe some of you are starting again with a new job. Or maybe you've just moved in to Arizona and this is a new place for you. Maybe some of you are starting again with a new age. Maybe you're 13, you're a teenager now, or you're 21 or 50 or 75, right? Maybe you're starting again with a new career or a new relationship. Or maybe it's starting again with a current relationship with your partner or with your kids or with yourself. I want you to feel empowered to start again and know that there's a renewal and a refreshment that comes from that. And so I have a call to action that I want you guys to do today. There's so many ways we can use what God's telling us. And men, I want you to, and women, I want you to think of somebody, a woman in your life that has encouraged you, empowered you, inspired you. And I want you to call them today. Or maybe text, or maybe it's a social media post, or you write them a letter and you send it in the mail or an email. Pray about someone that's deeply impacted your life, a woman in your life that has empowered you. And I want you to thank them today. Women, if you don't have a Ruth or a Naomi in your life that's empowering you, I promise you, it will change your life to have somebody like that. So there are so many ways that you can do that. We have a women's ministry on Wednesday mornings and Wednesday evenings where we study the Bible and you build community with other women. Celebrate Recovery is an amazing opportunity to get together with a group of women who have similar hurts, habits, and hang-ups as you. And I'm telling you, some powerful, deep healing happens in those rooms that I'm honored to be a part of. Also, we have Momco launching in the fall, and that is MOPS rebranded for moms, just so you know, of all ages. You don't have to have kids of preschoolers, where you can build community and find your best friends in that type of community. And everyone, for those of you that were here last week, you heard Will Graham. We had the honors of having him here with the afters, and he encouraged us, if you have just accepted Jesus as your personal Lord and Savior, first of all, we are so excited and we welcome you into the family of Christ. And maybe you rededicated your life to Christ. Well, today, after this service, there are baptisms. We want you to be a part of that new start, that new beginning. So even if you haven't signed up, you can jump over and you can be a part of baptisms today. And also, an amazing way for us to take action today is our 1 day's wages Empower Women. So Palmer is going to come up and share how you can do that.
Thank you for sharing that story of Naomi and your story. God is using Pastor Christine here in great ways. And as Pastor Sani just said, and as I said earlier today, we want to get behind empowering women in a very meaningful, tangible way. So I want to ask if everyone in the room, employed or unemployed, can take 1 day's wages If you're between jobs, or like Veronica said earlier, you're retired, it doesn't matter. Calculate what you used to make or what you believe God's going to give you to make next year. And give that today. Just follow the QR code here. We have a drop-down menu, or follow it off the screen. We have a drop-down menu on our regular giving page for Empower Women. 100% of this goes to Convoy, and they are one of the most trusted nonprofits in the country. By the way, Forbes ranks them as 26 out of 1,600,000 nonprofits in the country. And we've been working with them for 10 years and love what they do to empower women. So be a part of that. We ask everyone in the room.